Okay, Nick, thank you very much for your time. Saw Golda, very much enjoyed it. I liked it very, very much. Now, this is very much different from your last film, Florence Foster Jenkins, which I understand was inspired by a YouTube clip of all things. This is so very different and much more serious. What was it that sparked your interest with this story?
Well, there are parallels between the two films. Obviously, Florence Foster Jenkins was deluded and completely bonkers, and her mission in life was to sing at Carnegie Hall. And Golda was the opposite of that. Her mission was to create a country and save it from invasion. But they both had a mission, and they were both very determined, and they were going to accompany that mission. So there was a bit of a parallel, and they're both towards the end of their lives and both unwell. So uh, I suppose the inspiration for Golda was, just who she was, her character, this indefatigable. I mean, I like people who just don't give up. I love those fighters and we all do. Why do we love Vladimir Zelensky? It's because he said, when he said, "I don't need a ride, I need ammunition," and that's those are the people I like. And Golda was the 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 mother of all of that. This is a woman that would never give up and was unstoppable, and I love that.
So clearly, being an historical drama, there's a lot of research obviously has gone into this. Now, obviously, Golda Meir is no longer with us, but members of her inner circle, and I think even the ex-head of Mossad, Zamir, is still around, and even Ariel Sharon, obviously. Did you get to talk to any of these people?
I thought, I mean, I began my research from a position of almost complete ignorance, and which was kind of a good thing because I came to the whole world with no prejudice whatsoever. And I thought, if I'm going to do this job properly, I will have to speak to everyone that was alive at the time and in that room with her. And there were a number of people in their 80s and 90s who are still with us. And Zvi Zamir, the head of Mossad, when I was researching back in 2017, he was 94, I think 95 at the time, still completely with it. Sadly, he's now succumbed to dementia. He's still alive, but in a hospital, which is very sad because he would love. I think he would love to have seen this film. But I met with Zvi Zamir, quite an extraordinary moment in my life to sit down with the head of Mossad, it was just extraordinary to hear him talk about Golda, how he respected her and how he admired her, and how she had listened to all that he had to say. He brought information from his Egyptian spy Marwan, who was very much at the high table in Egypt, and Marwan betrayed his country out of a sense of bitterness because he wasn't taken seriously. And Zamir listened to everything he had to say and reported it back to Golda, and it allowed her to make a number of very, very important decisions. So that was wonderful, and lots of other people too who knew her in a more intimate way, and of course her grandsons, Daniel, Gideon, and Shaul, who are all my age and were around at the time of the Yom Kippur War as young children.
Now, like any biopic, there's going to be so much information that is at your disposal to use. Was there anything that you were unable to use, or anything, and also anything that you found that really surprised you that perhaps is not well known, maybe you have not been able to use?
Well, filmmaking is a very cruel business. Ideally, I would like to have seen my entire script shot. It would probably have ended up too long. So there were some family scenes that I really liked, which some of them were shot and some weren't. but they hit the cutting room floor, which is a shame. But you know, that's the way. I mean, with Florence Foster Jenkins, my absolute favorite scene in the whole film hit the cutting room floor. I mean, the best joke I've ever written, and it was, you know, and everyone loved it, and we'd see it in the screenings, and then the editor would say, "I'm sorry, this scene does not move us forwards. You know, this is just. I know we all like it, so that's just the way it is, and that's fine." What surprised me about in my research, well, I mean, it's the duality of her character. She's on one hand, you know, so motherly and so caring about individuals and soldiers and people that work for her, and she knew everyone's name and could remember birthdays and all of those things. And then on the other hand, she was perfectly prepared to slaughter thousands of enemies if she had to. And she first and foremost believed in Israel. She was a Zionist through and through, and that came first. It came before her health. It came before her well-being. It came before her marriage, and to a certain extent, it became before her children. And there was a very, very brutal and tough side to Golda. She was born with a mission, and she was going to carry it out. So there is this duality to her, which I found very fascinating.
Now, much like Florence Foster Jenkins, you again have got a great actress in the lead role. You produce this as well. You're involved as a producer as well. So, what discussions did you have with Dame Helen Mirren, getting her on board and getting her interested?
It was fantastically easy. You know, the list of A-list stars of a certain age is very, very short. Gideon Mayer, her grandson, was absolutely insistent that that Helen was the right choice. He felt that there was something about Helen that he recognized something of Golda in her, and
Right.
that you know, Helen is an extraordinarily tough and accomplished person, and clearly we would need someone that was not going to come to the project with a prejudice against Israel, because they just wouldn't do it. I mean, they wouldn't even read the script. So Helen's very open-minded, and she's a friend of Israel, and so all roads led to her, and we got the script to her via her agent, a guy called Fred Spector, who is a Hollywood legend. He's in his 90s, and he started his career representing Gregory Peck. So he is like old school.
Old school, yeah.
And Fred really liked it and said, "Oh, I'll get Helen to read it." And she read it and said yes, and that was it. So you know, my experience with making films is, you know, and I've probably written, I don't know how many scripts now, 10, 15, 20, I don't know, lots and lots. The ones that get made, it's like hot knife through butter. All the others, if they, "Oh, I quite like it, it's interesting. Yeah, well, we can see it," you know, forget it, it's over. You gotta write a script, big star says, "Yes, I'll do it," and then that's it. And it was the same with Meryl Streep on Florence. She read the script and said yes, and that was it. And
It doesn't get any better than that,
it
then.
doesn't. And but you know, that was done and dusted in about a month. Whereas Golda took 5 years to get going. But that's not unusual with movies. You know, there's lots and lots of moving parts, and things have got to line up, and all of those things. So, relatively speaking, it's not been too bad.
Now, you've written so many scripts, you say, maybe this is a little bit contentious, but I'll ask you anyway. You very successfully defended your script for Florence Foster Jenkins against a claim of co-authorship, to such a degree that I think that case has now become a stated case for these kind of things that, you know, it's not the first time this has happened probably won't be the last. Do you find now that with that experience under your belt and with that successful legal case under your belt, that going forward, it informs the way about you, how you go about writing scripts and who you contact and who you reference?
I think that I would certainly say to anyone who writes or makes films that it's important to make sure that you're standing on very solid ground in terms of copyright. It is a very, very difficult and complex area. Um, with Golda, I had an enormous amount of help from various people, academics, and whilst I've not, you know, quoted their work, the script is definitely informed by it. But I was, you know, they were all very decent people who just wanted to help, and I had no anxiety about any kind of dispute of any kind, and there hasn't been. So
That's
I think that that's how I proceed now.
so,
Yeah,
so,
people who you work with.
well, to finish up now, something a little bit lighter, just going way, way back, because I know you've had a number of jobs, you know, even before you kind of got into scripting. But from basically when you were a boy, can you remember what the first film was that you ever saw on the big screen?
Um, I loved as a boy. I loved Bond movies, but the film that really sort of shattered me, uh, and I was probably about 12 years old, was, believe it or not, The Misfits.
Ah,
And I I fell so in love with Marilyn Monroe. I sat and watched this film. So my grandparents, my nana would come on Sunday afternoon. They'd come and we'd have lunch, and then we'd all sit and watch the Sunday afternoon film on the TV. And they'd sit and smoke, and we'd all sit there. And I can remember watching The Misfits and the smell of tobacco and my nana and granddad smoking. And I just was so mesmerized by Marilyn Monroe. I couldn't sleep afterwards. And I couldn't work out what had happened. I had no idea. And I didn't know she was Marilyn Monroe or famous, but it was just, she was a movie star, and she just did something to me, and I've never quite recovered, I don't think.
I, I don't
So
think you're alone in that.
So there was, I suppose, what I'd say about it is that there are certain people who are just very special, and that's what a movie star is. You know, you see them, and there's something about them that you cannot take your eyes off them, and I'll never forget that moment. But obviously, James Bond hitting people and all of that, that was also very good.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for your
My
time.
pleasure.
Say,
Nice to meet you.